I was 10 years old when my entire family was slaughtered. To eliminate any chance of revenge, the assassins showed no mercy, not even sparing the chickens and dogs. Hidden boys were dragged out one by one and killed. Eggs were shaken until yolk and white mixed into a messy blur. Earthworms were sliced clean through vertically. Even ant nests were doused with boiling water. In the end, they found me, a pretty little girl, through the cracks in the rockery. I watched as my 4 elder brothers were hunted down by the masked killers and hauled into the courtyard. The leader, clad in black, amused himself by holding out a piece of candy and a dagger, forcing each of them to make a choice. My eldest brother trembled violently as he reached for the dagger. The man in black's voice was cold and cutting. "This boy harbors murderous intent. He must not live." Before his words faded, my eldest brother's head fell to the ground. My second brother, his face ashen with terror, chose the candy. The man in black sneered coldly. "This boy is deeply scheming. He must not live." A flash of silver sliced through the night. My second brother clutched his throat, gurgling as he collapsed to the ground. My third brother hesitated, then grabbed both the candy and the dagger. The man in black's tone dripped with disdain. "This boy is consumed by greed. He must not live." My third brother died too. My fourth brother refused to choose either. The man in black's eyes narrowed. "This boy is rebellious to the bone. He must not live." My fourth brother, fearless in the face of death, hurled insults at the killer. "You villain, if you fail to kill me today, I swear I will tear you limb from limb someday." The man in black clapped his hands and laughed aloud, spirited. "Since you are the last surviving blood of Lord Liu, I'll grant you a chance to seek revenge. Boy, when we meet again, I will kill you." With that, he turned and walked away, leaving my fourth brother frozen in stunned silence. Once the realization that he had narrowly escaped death sank in, my fourth brother nearly burst into tears of joy. But the man in black suddenly turned back, his eyes glinting with the cruel amusement of a hunter toying with his prey. "Boy, we meet again." The mixture of tears and laughter froze on my fourth brother's face. He shot a quick glance in the direction of my hiding place, then suddenly sprang to his feet and darted toward the gate. But he had barely taken a few steps when a sword pierced his back, pinning him to the door. Huddled in the tiny crevice of the rockery, I clamped my hand tightly over my mouth, tears streaming down my face, but dared not make a single sound. I watched as the man in black pulled the sword from my fourth brother's body, wiped the blood clean on his falling corpse, then gave a listless order. "Everyone is dead, let's go." The killers vanished as silently as they had come, leaving the courtyard submerged in deathly silence. Only then did I dare to release my hand and gasp for air. I wanted to rush out to check if anyone else in the family was still alive, to bury my parents and brothers. But the memory of the man in black's mocking gaze as he toyed with my brothers sent an inexplicable sense of danger coursing through me, rooting me to the spot. Before long, faint footsteps echoed through the courtyard once more. The masked killers had returned. Seeing that the courtyard remained exactly as they had left it, one of the killers spoke to their leader. "Master, perhaps you were mistaken." The man in black kicked my fourth brother's corpse in disgust. "Impossible. That boy clearly tried to lead us away. There must be someone else hiding here, so that was it. Their earlier departure had been a trap to lure me out." The man in black's sharp eyes scanned the courtyard, then suddenly strode toward the rockery. My heart hammered violently against my chest. I squeezed my body as tightly as I could into the narrow space of the rockery, but inevitably, my eyes met his malicious gaze through the gaps in the stone's eyes that peered out from behind his black mask. He smiled coldly. "You hid better than your brothers." I was dragged out of the rockery and forced to my knees before the man in black. Only then did I fully take in the horrifying scene of the courtyard under the pale moonlight. My father was hanged from the parasol tree that my mother loved most. My mother lay sprawled in the octagonal pavilion not far away, her clothes torn to shreds, her lower body a mangled mess of blood and flesh. Her eyes, wide open in eternal agony, stared unblinkingly in my father's direction. The heads of my wet nurse and the steward were impaled on the swings. A cold wind blew, causing the two swings to sway back and forth, their heads bobbing up and down. Blood dripping steadily from their severed necks onto the grass below. Not a single servant in the household had been spared. Even the big yellow dog that had grown up with me had been disemboweled. I knew I would not escape death either. I lifted my head and glared fiercely at the man in black. The stench of blood mingled with the rich scent of ambergris on his body, a nauseating combination that assaulted my nostrils, but he did not kill me. He did not even force me to choose between the candy and the dagger, as he had done with my brothers, simply because I was just a little girl. In the years that followed, I would often recall the strange look he gave me then, one of contempt, amusement, and cruelty. As if he were staring at an interesting toy he could twist and break at will, he stopped his men, who were intent on wiping out the last of the Lu bloodline, and said in a meaningful tone, "A little girl can't stir up any trouble. Keeping her alive will be far more entertaining than killing her." 02. The man in black was right to look down on me. For a helpless little girl, taking revenge was nothing but a distant dream. Even surviving in this cruel world was an uphill battle. From the day my family met its tragic end, the world unleashed all its malice upon me without reservation. The local government of Jingju hastily dismissed the massacre as the doing of bandits. I chanced to overhear a conversation between the prefect and his secretary. Lord Lu crossed someone he shouldn't have, a mere imperial censor, yet he dared to pit himself against a far more powerful foe. That's why he met such a gruesome end. Now all the Lu men are dead, leaving only a pretty little girl behind. What use is she? So the authorities were not to be trusted. Not a single member of the Lu clan stepped forward to seek justice for my family. Instead, they swarmed in like vultures, scrambling to seize our family property. Because I was a girl, I had no legal right to inherit my father's estate. I was not even allowed to perform the funeral ritual of breaking the mourning bowl at my father's burial. They even brazenly discussed selling me off right there in the mourning hall where my family's spirits rested. A distant aunt from a collateral branch of the clan couldn't bear to watch. "She's just a little girl, and such a pretty one at that. Keep her for a few more years, then marry her off for a handsome bride price. Why be so ruthless?" Her husband slapped her hard across the face. "What do you know? Her family has offended someone formidable. Keeping her around is nothing but inviting disaster upon ourselves." So blood relatives were not to be trusted either. On the day I was dragged onto the human trafficker's boat, I secretly slipped rat poison into my family's well. The trafficker planned to sell me off in Jiangnan. Perhaps it was because I had been so obedient along the way, even serving him tea and water, or perhaps simply because I was a weak little girl. He did not guard me closely. When the boat docked in Jiangnan, all the other girls he had brought were sold off, all except me. That night, he got dead drunk and shouted for me to come and wash his feet. I bowed my head and obeyed without a word. As he sighed in contentment at having a former young lady of a noble household wait on him hand and foot, he rambled drunkenly about how the taxes in Jiangnan were growing heavier by the day, driving countless destitute peasants to become bandits who preyed on traveling merchants. A flood had devastated the region this year, destroying countless farmlands and villages. Starving refugees had no choice but to sell their children to survive. A handful of grain was enough to buy a healthy young girl. Which made his trafficking business even harder to run. He let out a loud, drunken burp, then looked at me and grinned. "Luckily for me, there's you, little girl. You're going to make me a fortune. I don't know who you've offended, but someone paid a huge sum of money to make sure I sell you to the lowest rung brothel in Jiangnan." A chill ran down my spine. Who was that person? He shook his head, his tongue thick with alcohol. No idea. He was wearing a mask. I waited until he passed out dead drunk, then slit his throat, set the boat on fire, and fled. 03. Yet in the vast expanse of Jiangnan, I had no relatives to turn to, and was forced to become a beggar. When you are weak and vulnerable, a pretty face is not an asset, it only breeds malice. Even though I was still a young girl, countless men with lewd eyes tried to deceive me, violate me, tear me apart. Their fancy robes and kind pretenses could not mask the lust swirling in their murky eyes as they looked at a child. I had to smudge my face with dirt and cover my body in filth just to beg for food without being harassed at every turn. To survive, I knelt on the streets and begged for scraps, was beaten and kicked like garbage, fought with stray dogs for food, stole offerings from graves, slept in a mortuary, and lay among piles of unburied corpses in a mass grave. As the only daughter in the Liu family, I had been spoiled and pampered by my parents and 4 elder brothers, raised in silk and satin, fed on the finest delicacies. My body, accustomed to comfort, could barely endure such hardships, no matter how fierce the hatred burning in my heart. No matter how many times I told myself to stay alive, to survive like a stray dog if I had to, all for the sake of revenge, I still fell gravely ill. My body burning with fever, I collapsed by the roadside. Though my skin was scorching hot, I felt a bone-deep cold seeping into my bones, but my clothes were tattered and ragged, offering no warmth at all, and I could not stop shivering. I thought I would die just like that, but when I opened my eyes again, I found myself lying in a dilapidated temple. A boy of 13 or 14 was pressing his hand to my forehead, checking my temperature. When he saw I had woken up, he cried out in delight, she's awake, in an instant." 7 or 8 children, boys and girls around my age, crowded around me. Like me, they were all sallow and emaciated, dressed in tattered rags. They chattered all at once, telling me that they were a band of beggars who looked out for each other. The boy who had saved me was called Ajiu. He was their leader, the one who had carried me back and saved my life. From that day on, I was no longer alone. I finally had companions. We went out begging during the day, and at night we shared the meager food we had begged for in the broken temple. The disaster in Jiangnan was severe. Hordes of displaced refugees swarmed toward the prefectural cities, seeking shelter, but by the order of Jiang Shucheng, the provincial administrative commissioner, the city gates of every prefecture in Jiangnan were tightly shut, refusing to admit the refugees. Inside the walls lay wealth and luxury, outside, only starvation and death, the cries of the destitute refugees. Their wails of despair could be clearly heard even through the thick city walls. Yet the wealthy families behind those walls continued to live in silk and splendor, feasting and reveling every night. They would rather let their grain rot away than distribute it to the starving refugees. Afraid of being driven out of the city as refugees, we were always careful. Most days, we could not beg enough to fill our bellies, and had to huddle together to sleep, enduring the pangs of hunger. It was not until the emperor sent the crown prince to oversee disaster relief that things finally began to improve. As soon as the crown prince arrived in Jiangnan, he acted with swift and decisive authority. He punished Jiang Shucheng, along with the other corrupt officials who had aided and abetted him, and the wealthy merchants who had been hoarding grain to drive up prices. Furthermore, the Zhu clan, the crown prince's maternal relatives, and the most prominent noble family in Jiangnan voluntarily donated a large quantity of grain to aid the relief efforts. Soon, the disaster in Jiangnan was brought under control. My companions and I mixed in with the refugees to collect the porridge distributed at the relief shelters. That was the first time I laid eyes on Crown Prince Rongyin. He stood in the porridge shed, personally ladling out porridge to the refugees. The officials and guards around him clustered like stars around the moon. Surrounding him, his ethereal, otherworldly beauty, his gentle and elegant demeanor, and his moon-white silk robe stood in stark contrast to the ragged, stinking refugees huddled together nearby. I stared at him, transfixed, until suddenly, the bowl of porridge in my hand was snatched away by a middle-aged man who had already received his share, and I was knocked to the ground. I was still feeling frustrated when the crown prince walked over to me. He helped me up, ordered the man who had greedily gulped down my porridge to be punished, and then personally ladled another bowl of porridge for me. I stared at his hands as he poured the porridge. His slender, pale fingers were stained with my dirt, but somehow, I still thought they were as pure and sacred as jade that had been blessed before the Buddha. Just like him, the benevolent and virtuous prince, whose reputation for integrity and compassion was as spotless as frost and snow. That night, for the first time, we did not have to rack our brains to figure out how to fill our bellies. We sat around the bonfire, chatting freely. We talked about the disaster in Jiangnan, about the crown prince who was as noble and pure as jade, about the wealthy and powerful Zhu clan, and about Jiang Shucheng, the former administrative commissioner who was now a prisoner, awaiting transport to the capital. We talked about ourselves, our pasts, our futures. perhaps in the eyes of the world. We beggars, whose lives were as cheap as grass, dreamed of nothing more than begging enough food to fill our bellies each day. But the truth was, every single one of us had a dream. Guzi wanted to study and learn to read, Xiaonyo wanted to become a traveling merchant, Eria wanted to find her parents, Minna wanted to go to the capital to broaden her horizons, Aju wanted to join the army to become a great general who would expand the borders of the empire. He said, once. When I was begging outside a tea house, I heard a storyteller inside tell a tale. I can't remember the details, but there's one line I'll never forget. Are kings and nobles born into their high positions, who says a beggar like me can't become a great general someday? As Aju spoke, the flames of the bonfire danced across his face, making his confident eyes shine brightly with determination. I nodded in agreement. You're right, as long as we stay alive, anything is possible. He turned to me and asked, what about you? Me, what I wanted, of course, was revenge. I pondered silently, wondering if it would be possible to seek help from the Crown Prince. The noble reputation of Crown Prince Rongyin had reached even me, living in faraway Jingju. Rongyin was the third son of the current emperor, born to the late empress. The emperor had deeply loved Empress Ju, who had died giving birth to Rongyin, and thus, he doted on the only child she had left behind. Rongyin was named Crown Prince when he was just 7 days old. He had been precocious since childhood. He could compose poetry at 5, painted the night banquet in Shengjing as a birthday gift for the emperor at 7, single-handedly shot 9 wolves during a royal hunt at 9, and began attending court to observe politics at 10. Since then, he had often traveled incognito to observe the lives of the common people. The political opinions he put forward were always for the benefit of the people, earning him the admiration of both the court and the public, and the love of the common people. The Crown Prince was the epitome of benevolence and virtue. He would surely help me, wouldn't he? I was lost in my own thoughts, plotting, when suddenly, Eria, who had been chasing Minna around, pounced on me, knocking me to the ground. Minna ran over, tickling Eria's ribs. Eria wriggled in my arms, giggling uncontrollably. She said, Isn't this nice? Yes, it was nice. Those days were hard. We had no decent clothes to wear, no enough food to eat, but they were some of the few peaceful moments I had known since my family was destroyed. I had thought that we beggars would go on like this, relying on each other, until we could finally pursue our respective dreams. But Aju betrayed us. He wanted to join the army and he needed money for the journey, so he sold the boys to work in the brutal labor camps, and the girls to the brothels. A beggar's life was worth so little. He had to sell every single one of us just to scrape together enough money for his travel expenses. He taught me a harsh lesson. I learned that even friends could not be fully trusted, not even those who had saved your life. 04. Fate seemed determined to drive me to the brink of destruction. The madam who bought us was a heartless woman, who specialized in raising young girls to serve clients with perverted tastes. On the night we tried to escape and were caught, the madam sent me to the room of a fat, old lecher. I did not resist, nor did I plan to kill myself to preserve my chastity. I had to survive, even if I was trampled into the mud. I had to keep breathing. I had not yet asked the Crown Prince for help. I had not yet avenged my family. I could not die an unknown death, not even knowing who my enemies were. But when I saw Eria's tiny, mangled body being carried out of the room, I could no longer contain my rage. Her eyes were wide open in eternal agony, and her limp hand still clutched a grubby, faded braided bracelet. She had once told me it was a gift from her mother. She could no longer remember how she had become separated from her parents, where her home was, or how she had ended up wandering the streets of Jiangnan. All her faith and hope for the future had been pinned on that bracelet, and now, it all lay dead and buried in her dull, lifeless eyes. A human life was so fragile, yet so heavy, it weighed down on my heart like a boulder. As the fat old man reached for me with hands stained with Eria's blood, I pulled the hairpin from my head and drove it deep into his bare stomach. You wretched whore, he howled in pain, backhanding me so hard that I crashed to the floor. Enraged, he hauled me up by the hair and smashed my head against the bedpost. I struggled with every ounce of strength I had, biting, scratching. using every weapon I could get my hands on to fight back. But the killing intent and hatred of a weak little girl did not frighten a man, it only fueled his desire to torture and humiliate me. The more I resisted, the more excited his lustful eyes became. He laughed maniacally as he tore my clothes to shreds, choking me with his hands. Even with the gaping, bleeding wound in his stomach, he was still intent on violating me. It was at this moment of utter despair that Rong-ju appeared. He held a long sword in his hand, kicking the door open with a single blow. With one swift strike, he beheaded the fat man who was pinning me down, then took off his luxurious cloak and draped it over my naked body to cover me. His men killed the madam and set the brothel on fire, handling everything quickly and cleanly, leaving no trace behind. He told me that he was the second prince, and that my father had once been his teacher. He said that the reason my family had been massacred was because my father had uncovered evidence that the Zhu clan, the maternal relatives of the crown prince, and Jiang Shucheng, the administrative commissioner of Jiangnan, had colluded to bring disaster to the people of Jiangnan, sparking widespread unrest. He said that after he learned of what had happened to my family, and that I was the only survivor, he had searched for me tirelessly for a long time. He pulled me into his arms. His voice filled with overwhelming relief. "Xinyu, thank goodness you're alive. Thank goodness I've managed to protect the only remaining blood of your father." The towering flames of the burning brothel cast flickering shadows across his handsome face, making his delicate eyebrows and eyes glimmer in the light. He acted so convincingly, putting on such a perfect show of concern and affection. But I had a sharp sense of smell. I caught the faint scent of ambergris mingling with the stench of blood on his clothes. I also recognized the cruel amusement hidden behind the false compassion in his phoenix eyes, the exact same look as the man in black from that fateful night, in my midnight nightmares. I had seen those eyes countless times. I had seen them staring mockingly at my 4 elder brothers, forcing them to choose between the candy and the dagger. I had seen them gazing at me with contempt and dark meaning, saying those words that had haunted me for years: "A little girl can't stir up any trouble. Keeping her alive will be far more entertaining than killing her." My entire body went rigid in his arms. I forced myself not to tremble, not to show the slightest hint of my realization, not to give myself away. I heard him say, "Xinyu, it was Grand Tutor Zhu, the Crown Prince's maternal grandfather, who ordered the murder of your family. Your enemies are the Zhu clan, and the Crown Prince, 05. Rong-ju handed me a memorial of impeachment. The handwriting on the memorial was my father's, bold, upright, and full of integrity. It detailed all the crimes that Jiang Shucheng, the administrative commissioner of Jiangnan, and the Zhu clan had committed over the years, colluding to impose exorbitant taxes and levies under various pretexts to line their own pockets. Allowing the Zhu clan to seize the people's farmland and oppress the common folk, reducing the people of Jiangnan to abject poverty and despair. Rong-ju said that my father's memorial had never reached the emperor. It had been intercepted by Grand Tutor Zhu. It was this very memorial that had brought disaster upon my family. He explained to me in detail how powerful the Crown Prince's faction, led by Grand Tutor Zhu, was in the imperial court. My father had been an honest and upright official. And though he had stood alone, with no allies to support him, he had still dared to speak up for the people, fighting against injustice with his own strength. As he spoke, his expression was filled with grief and sorrow, a perfect portrait of a man deeply distressed by the wrongful death of a loyal minister. He was a completely different person from the cruel killer who had slaughtered my family that night. I knew what he was planning. He wanted to take down the Crown Prince. I also knew that my family's tragedy had indeed been caused by my father's decision to impeach the Zhu clan. A memorial that had been intercepted was the perfect tool to frame the Zhu clan, giving Grand Tutor Zhu a motive to kill my entire family. Rong-ju wanted to use the brutal massacre of my family, the death of an upright censor who had dared to speak for the people, to stir up public outrage, to enrage the emperor, and to use this as an opportunity to strike a fatal blow against Grand Tutor Zhu and the Crown Prince. But it was clear that Rong-ju's plan had failed. The prefect of Jingju had hastily dismissed my family's massacre as the work of bandits, and I suspected that Grand Tutor Zhu had been behind this cover-up. He had been afraid that an official investigation into the case would lead to the discovery that he had intercepted my father's memorial. Rong-ju sighed, his voice heavy with regret. The news of what happened to your family reached the capital, but unfortunately, before it could reach the emperor's ears, Grand Tutor Ju suppressed it once again. I had once heard my father talk about the imperial family's affairs. The emperor had no shortage of sons. The second prince, Rong-ju, had always been an inconspicuous figure. I had only heard that his mother had died shortly after giving birth to him, earning him the reputation of being a jinx who had killed his own mother, and for this reason, he had never been favored by the emperor, because the emperor loved and valued the crown prince so deeply, and wanted to pave the way for his succession. Most of his other sons had been sent to their fiefdoms at an early age. Surprisingly, Rong-ju was the exception. He had been allowed to stay in the capital, and in recent years, with the emperor's approval. He had even begun to attend court and observe political affairs, but even so, he had always kept a low profile in the imperial court, getting along with everyone, never forming close ties with any officials. Who would have thought that this seemingly harmless man was actually a deranged, bloodthirsty madman? Now, he looked at me with that deceptively gentle face of his, asking me, "Xin-yu, will you come with me to the capital? Will you help me bring down the crown prince, and avenge your family?" I had no choice. 06. The day I followed Rong-ju to the capital coincided with the crown prince's return from his disaster relief mission in Jiangnan. This trip to Jiangnan had greatly boosted the prestige of both the crown prince and the Ju clan. As the four-horse carriage bearing the insignia of the crown prince's palace entered the outer city, escorted by guards, it was greeted by crowds of common people lining the streets, cheering and applauding enthusiastically. I hid in the throng of people, listening to the praises being heaped on the crown prince all around me, praising his kindness and generosity, his benevolence and righteousness, his courage to punish the wicked and protect the innocent, his efforts, along with the Ju clan, to save the countless lives of the people of Jiangnan. I saw that pale, slender hand lift the carriage curtain slightly, then lower it again. I heard Rong-ju's voice behind me, cold and mocking. "Xin-yu, do you see that? How hypocritical my third brother is." Jiang Shucheng was born into a poor family. Even though he held the high position of administrative commissioner, how could he possibly stand up to the Ju clan, which had dominated Jiangnan for generations, without Grand Tutor Ju's orders? How could he have concealed his crimes from the emperor's eyes, committing all those atrocities in Jiangnan? Unfortunately for Jiang Shucheng, even though Grand Tutor Ju intercepted your father's memorial, the heavy rains this spring and summer caused several river embankments in Jiangnan to collapse. This flood made it impossible to cover up their crimes any longer. They had no choice but to sacrifice him, letting him take all the blame. And then our dear crown prince arrived in Jiangnan as the imperial inspector, along with the Ju clan, to distribute relief and grant favors to the people, winning their hearts and minds. So even a man who seemed as pure and flawless as jade was not to be trusted. But wait, were the collapses of those river embankments in Jiangnan really entirely due to the heavy rains? Rong-ju pointed to the officials surrounding the crown prince's carriage, to Grand Tutor Ju, who was approaching the carriage holding an imperial edict to welcome the crown prince back. He leaned down and whispered in my ear, "Xin-yu, do you see them? They are the pillars that support the crown prince in the imperial court. The crown prince may seem to stand above everyone else, but in reality, his position depends entirely on the emperor's favor. If we cut off these pillars one by one, if we remove all his support, then the crown prince will fall. Once he falls, once he is isolated and helpless, with no power to rely on, that will be our chance to settle the score, to make him lose the emperor's favor once and for all. At that time, you will be able to take your revenge on him. Do you understand?" I understood. If I wanted to avenge my family, I would have to cut off Rong-ju's pillars first. I would have to make him isolated and helpless, with no power to rely on. Rong-ju raised his hand and gently stroked the top of my head, his voice laced with temptation. "Xin-yu, will you join me in cutting down the crown prince's supporters? Will you help me bring him down?" He was tall, standing with his back to the light, his shadow completely enveloping my small, thin figure. That nauseating scent of ambergris filled my nostrils once again. He wanted to turn me into a knife to be wielded against the crown prince. I had no choice. But if I survived, one day, this knife would turn against the one who held it. I put on a look of burning hatred for the crown prince, lifting my head to look at him with eyes full of complete trust. Yes, 07. I entered Rongju's secret guard battalion, unlike the other children in the battalion who had been bought and sold. I was personally trained by Rongju himself. He taught me how to wield a sword, how to kill. He taught me how to disguise myself, how to lie low, how to manipulate people's hearts. He was an excellent teacher, and I was an even better student. I went from feeling sick to my stomach at the sight of a corpse, to being able to take a life without batting an eyelid. I went from tensing up involuntarily with hatred every time I saw him, to being able to act better than him, to pretend more convincingly than he ever could. Even when he taught me sword techniques hand in hand, his body pressed close to mine, my heart remained steady, without the slightest flutter. Sometimes, when I was in Rongju's presence, I caught a glimpse of my own reflection in the mirror. The look of complete trust and attachment in my eyes as I gazed at him was so convincing that it almost fooled me myself. He was my enemy, yet he was also my mentor. I devoured everything he taught me greedily, absorbing every skill, every lesson. Everything I learned from him would one day become a weapon to use against him in my revenge. Rongju said that the crown prince's power rested on 3 pillars: civil power, military power, and wealth. The civil power pillar was naturally Grand Tutor Ju, the leader of the civil officials. The military power pillar was the Duke of Zhun, who commanded the capital garrison and was a close ally of Grand Tutor Ju. The wealth pillar was a wealthy merchant named Qin Xian, the purse strings of the crown prince's faction. He said that for these pillars of the crown prince's power, eliminating them was the worst strategy. Turning them to our side would be the ultimate triumph. But I thought to myself, men like Rongju, like Grand Tutor Ju, who held the power of life and death in their hands, who treated human lives like weeds, who indulged in wanton killing and cruelty, their tyranny stemmed from one thing and one thing only: power. That was why Jiang Shucheng could seal the city gates, watching countless refugees starve to death, leading to cannibalism. That was why the Zhu clan could bring disaster to Jiangnan, yet force a third-rank official to take all the blame, and shamelessly use disaster relief to polish their reputation. That was why Rongju, an unfavored prince, could afford to raise a battalion of secret guards and dead soldiers, could casually slaughter my entire family for the sake of the throne, and manipulate me to this day. Even if I managed to stand before the emperor one day and lay out my grievances, what difference would it make? Since ancient times, no emperor has ever executed his own son for the sake of a commoner's injustice. Rongju's noble birth had granted him the privilege of impunity. Power truly was a wonderful thing. If these pillars could be used by Grand Tutor Ju, if they could be used by Rongju, then why could they not be used by me? If I held power in my hands, I would have no trouble killing Rongju and avenging my family. In Rongju's presence, I often saw a woman named Fuyin. She was 4 years older than me, breathtakingly beautiful, and extremely skilled in the art of seduction. I heard that Rongju had specially hired several famous courtesans to teach her the ways of the bedchamber, then sent her to seduce one political enemy after another, to spy on them between the sheets, or to kill them. The first time we met, she had just returned from a kill, a fresh bite mark still visible on her neck. I glanced at it, and she shot me a cold look. "What are you staring at? You'll end up just like me sooner or later." I could feel the hostility radiating from her icy demeanor. She did not like me, and I did not like her, beneath the heavy stench of blood that clung to her. I caught a whiff of a faint, distinctive jasmine-scented powder. It was the same scent I had smelled on the masked killer who had forced me to my knees before Rongju on the night my family was slaughtered. But I was certain none of the killers Rongju had brought with him that night had been a woman. Later, I learned that, like me, she had been personally taken into the secret guard battalion by Rongju, and was one of only 2 female secret guards personally trained by him. She had always been Rongju's most trusted blade. 2 years later, I too became a blade in Rongju's hand. Rongju gave me my first mission, to kill the wealthy merchant Qin Xian, 08. Few people knew that this unassuming merchant surnamed Qin was actually as rich as an emperor. With countless properties, he was the moneybags of the crown prince's faction. Rongju was greedy. Killing Qin Xian alone would not cut off the crown prince's financial resources. Grand Tutor Zhu and his allies could easily install another member of the Qin clan to take his place. What Rongju wanted was the entire Qin fortune. Qin Xian was already past his 40s, yet he had no sons to inherit his wealth. Rongju decided to give him a son, one who would inherit everything after Qin Xian's death. He found a 10-year-old boy with legs broken beyond repair, who bore an 80% resemblance to Qin Xian. He renamed the boy Qin Feng. Then ordered me to pose as Qin Feng's twin sister. We were to go to the Qin mansion to claim kinship, pretending to be Qin Xian's long-lost children. It was a lie so flimsy it would collapse at the slightest touch. Because Qin Xian was a depraved monster with a sick taste, he only desired beautiful young girls under the age of 10. Any woman who had reached puberty held no appeal for him at all. All the girls he had violated had been innocent children who had not yet begun their menstruation. How could he possibly have fathered children who were now 10 years old? Yet when I pushed Qin Feng's wheelchair and knelt outside the gates of the Qin mansion, Qin Xian laid eyes on my face and publicly acknowledged us as his children without the slightest hesitation. At 12 years old, I was small and thin, no bigger than a 10-year-old thanks to my time as a beggar and the hardships I had endured in the secret guard battalion. A pretty, fragile little girl that was the trap Rongju had set for Qin Xian. I heard Qin Xian's steward trying to dissuade him in private. Those two children may not be yours, master. This could very well be a trap set by your enemies. But Qin Xian leered, his eyes glinting with lust. Whether they're mine or not doesn't matter. Did you see that little girl's face? She's a rare beauty. How could I possibly let her go? The steward paled. It's one thing to dally with the daughters of common folk. But if these children really are part of a trap, you'll be courting disaster by touching her. Qin Xian waved a hand dismissively. So what if it is? I didn't build my fortune from nothing and hold on to it for so many years without having something to fall back on. Even if something does go wrong, Grand Tutor Zhu and the others will protect me. At worst, I'll spend 3 to 5 years in prison. A girl as beautiful as that, 3 years would be a bargain, 5 years would still be worth it. Trading 3 years of my life for a lifetime of her suffering, it's a deal too good to pass up. Like Rongju, he looked down on me. Already regarding me as his personal plaything, he did not for a moment believe that a seemingly harmless little girl like me had the ability to kill him, but I was in no hurry. What I wanted was the thing in Qin Xian's hands that gave him control over the entire Qin fortune, a thing that could even be used to threaten Grand Tutor Zhu. Rongju wanted the entire Qin family's wealth, and so did I. Wealth can buy power. That was another lesson Rongju had taught me. But Rongju did not fully trust me yet. He had assigned another secret guard to watch my every move. I would have to evade his watchful eye if I wanted to get my hands on Qin Xian's secret and hide it away. 09. The secret guard assigned to monitor me was known as Dark 7. He was in love with Fuyin. The jasmine-scented powder Fuyin used was a unique blend he had personally made for her. He was one of the killers who had slaughtered my family that night. But Fuyin's heart belonged to Rongju. I had heard Fuyin's story in the secret guard battalion, 7 years ago. Her uncle had offended a local powerful official allied with the crown prince's faction, and her entire family had been killed in retaliation, leaving only her alive. She had been 9 years old at the time. If Rongju had not rescued her, she would have been sold to a brothel, doomed to a fate worse than death. On that day, he had appeared before her dressed in immaculate robes, his face filled with compassion, while she had been half naked and in rags, a pitiful, broken mess. A man of such noble birth had not hesitated to take her in his arms, had personally tended to her wounds, and had promised to teach her how to take revenge. From that day on, she had worshipped Rongju like a god. Like her faith, like a being worth sacrificing everything for. It sounded familiar, did it not? It was the exact same script Rongju had written for me. I deliberately brought up the striking similarities between Fuyin's life story and mine one day. When Dark Seven was once again pressing me to carry out the assassination of Qin Xian, Fuyin and I share the same misfortune, the same blood feud, but we also share the same luck to have met His Royal Highness the Second Prince, don't you think? Dark Seven froze, a complicated look crossing his face. He knew better than anyone the true nature of the salvation Rongju had offered me. I was betting that for the woman he loved, he would be driven to uncover the truth. 10. After that day, Dark Seven vanished without a trace. I was finally free to make my move against Qin Xian. The item in Qin Xian's possession was a set of account books, filled with the dark secrets of Grand Tutor Ju's faction and key members of the Qin clan. He had hidden them in a private villa by the Wangyu River. This villa was Qin Xian's exclusive den of pleasure for high-ranking officials and nobles, where unspeakable debauchery took place behind closed doors. Inside the villa stood a private study reserved solely for Qin Xian. No one else was allowed to enter, and the account books were concealed within its walls. No one would have guessed he would hide something so crucial in a place teeming with such a constant flow of people. I had sneaked into the villa once under the cover of night, but failed to find the hidden compartment where the books were stored, so I deliberately left traces of my intrusion. The next day, I resorted to a few tricks to get Qin Xian to bring me to the villa himself, then made sure his hands were coated with a specially formulated scent I had prepared. The moment he discovered the study had been breached, his first instinct would be to check if the account books were still there. Once his scent-covered fingers touched those books, my nose would pick up the trail without fail, and then, he would be ready to die. Yet an accident still occurred when I killed him. Dark Seven, who was supposed to be my backup, was nowhere to be found. After I ended Qin Xian's life with a single chopstick, I was forced to flee from his secret guards by jumping into the Wangyu River. The night was pitch black. I concealed myself in the icy summer river water. Swimming swiftly downstream like a fish, the guards gave chase relentlessly, raining arrows and throwing knives into the water all around me. A searing pain shot through my back. Just as I was about to lose my strength, I spotted a black awning boat drifting along the river under the night sky. Seated at the bow was a figure in white. As ethereal as an immortal, it was Crown Prince Rongin. Without a moment's hesitation, I swam toward the boat, pressing my body against its hull to hide from sight. Qin Xian's secret guards recognized the insignia of the Crown Prince's palace emblazoned on the boat. They lingered in the shadows for a moment, hesitant to offend the royal heir, and finally retreated unwillingly when I refused to leave the boat's side. I clung to the hull, drifting with the current until I was certain the danger had passed, then prepared to slip away, but a pale, slender hand suddenly reached out and grabbed my arm, lifting me halfway out of the water. I looked up in shock. Locking eyes with Rongin's gentle phoenix eyes, he held me firmly with one hand, turning to smile at the guard rowing the boat. "Look what I've caught swimming in the river." Clearly, he had known I was hiding there all along. "Little girl, who are you? Why were those men chasing you?" This was the third time I had laid eyes on Rongin. He was still dressed in his signature moon-white robe, standing against the backdrop of the Wangyu River's gentle breeze and bright moon, pure and untainted as if untouched by the world's filth. Yet the villa by the river was filled with officials from the Crown Prince's faction, indulging in nightly orgies. Countless bodies, men, women, boys, girls, had been carried out of that place over the years. When the upper reaches of a river are contaminated, how can the lower reaches remain clean? I let out a faint, almost imperceptible sneer, answering only his first question. "My surname is Liu. I am of the Liu clan from Jingju." Rongin froze for a moment. Seizing the opportunity, I lowered my head and bit down hard on the back of his hand holding me. As he flinched in pain and released his grip, I dove back into the water and swam away quickly. 11. With Qin Xian dead, Qin Feng, whom he had publicly acknowledged as his son, naturally became his sole heir. The crippled Qin Feng was nothing more than a puppet. Rongju's men easily took full control of Qin Xian's vast empire through him. A fortune rivaling the emperor's was now in Rongju's hands. After Jiang Shucheng had been made the scapegoat and executed along with his entire family, the Zhu clan had grown cautious in Jiangnan, daring not to amass wealth as brazenly as before. The Qin family had been the Crown Prince faction's largest source of funding. Now that the Qin fortune had fallen into Rongju's hands, it was like cutting off one of Grand Tutor Ju's arms. How could he have accepted this with equanimity? But no matter how unwilling he was, no one dared to investigate the circumstances of Qin Xian's death, for to do so would inevitably expose the sordid secrets hidden in the villa by the Wangyu River. They did not dare to take that risk. Rongju was highly satisfied with how I had completed my mission. But when I went to report back to him, he asked me a question. "Xinyu, do you know why Dark Seven disappeared?" I glanced at Fuyin, who stood beside him, gently fanning him with a silk fan. I did know why Dark Seven had vanished. It was Rongju who had orchestrated the massacre of Fuyin's entire family. 7 years ago, Rongju had been only 11 years old, yet he was already a deranged, bloodthirsty madman. He truly took pleasure in manipulating people's hearts. In his eyes, girls like Fuyin and me, beautiful yet vulnerable, could be easily controlled by love. A single act of kindness was enough to make us pledge our lives to him. Even though he was our mortal enemy, he toyed with us, teaching us how to wield a blade, never once fearing that the knife would one day turn against him. I had not chosen to tell Fuyin the truth myself. I had endured too many betrayals, been deceived by too many illusions to trust anyone easily. On the day Dark Seven had arranged to meet Fuyin, I had followed them secretly. I heard Dark Seven tell her that he was willing to betray Rongju for her, to take her far away and leave all this behind, or to help her avenge her family, no matter the cost. He had given her a choice, but Fuyin had chosen to kill him. Hidden in the shadows, I watched as she drove the sword, the very sword Dark Seven had given her, through his chest. Her eyes were filled with hatred, but not for Rongju. "Why did you tell me this? You should never have told me." It turned out that even women controlled by love could not be trusted. Dark Seven must have told her about my true origins long ago. Fuyin was too clever not to have guessed the rest. That was why she had looked at me with such hostility the first time we met. My existence had shattered the illusion Rongju had woven around her, the fantasy she had been willing to devote her entire life to. And Dark Seven had dared to tear away the pretense she had clung to so desperately. I had never imagined that someone could truly fall in love with the man who had slaughtered their entire family. I had heard that Fuyin had later led a group of men to massacre the noble who had destroyed her family, personally inflicting a slow, agonizing death upon him. Now that she knew the truth, that Rongju was her real enemy, she had screamed at Dark Seven instead. He had no choice, he had his reasons. Lying to me must have been just as painful for him, but it did not matter. Even if she was my enemy, she could still become a blade for me to use against Rongju, just as she had killed Dark Seven for me, allowing me to slip past Rongju's watchful eyes and obtain Qin Xian's account books, the true treasure of the Qin family. As Dark Seven lay dying, he had grabbed her hand, his eyes wide open in disbelief. "You always say that if His Highness hadn't saved you from the brothel, you would have been trapped in hell for eternity. But didn't he turn around and send you to the beds of other men, making you use your body to kill for him when you were only 12 years old?" Fuyin had just used her body to kill another political enemy for Rongju. It had been an ugly middle-aged man, and the slimy, repulsive feel of his hands still lingered on her skin. She began to tremble uncontrollably. Dark Seven clung tightly to her hand, refusing to close his eyes in death. "Fuyin, did His Highness really save you?" 12. "I do not know, Your Highness." I knew Rongju was testing me. He suspected that I had been involved in Dark Seven's disappearance. I simply bowed my head, my eyes lowered, my posture humble and obedient. He stared at me for a long moment, then suddenly grabbed my left wrist, rolled up my sleeve, and examined the cinnabar on my upper arm, a mark signifying my virginity. With great care, a smile spread across his lips. "Good, you've been obedient. You didn't let Qin Xian touch you. I told you before, no other man is allowed to lay a hand on you. If you had let anyone else touch you, I would have killed you." At that moment, I saw Fuyin's beautiful face twitch uncontrollably. 13. 2 years later, Rongju ordered me to cut off the second pillar of the Crown Prince's power. He wanted me to become the adopted daughter of the Duke of Zhen. The Duke of Zhen was a renowned war hero. and most military officers in the imperial court looked to him for guidance. Unfortunately, he had no heir to inherit his legacy. The Duke and his wife were deeply devoted to each other. They had been married for many years and had never taken concubines, bearing only one daughter, Yin Mingzhu. The girl had been betrothed to Grand Tutor Zhu's youngest grandson, Zhu Tingyuan, when she was still in her cradle. Tragically, Yin Mingzhu had gone missing at the age of 6. The Duke and his wife had been devastated, and had spent years searching for her without success. Most of the Zhu clan's direct descendants pursued careers in civil service, but Zhu Tingyuan had chosen the military path. With the Duke of Zhen's support, he had become a young general in the capital garrison at a tender age. The Zhu clan had never arranged another marriage for Zhu Tingyuan, hoping that the childhood bond and betrothal between him and Yin Mingzhu would eventually make him the Duke's son-in-law, and thus the heir to the capital garrison's military power. But if I could enter the Duke of Zhen's mansion, I would have no shortage of ways to sow discord between the Duke and Grand Tutor Zhu. Later, I could also find a way to persuade the Duke to hand over his military power to Rong Zhu's men. This scheme of usurping another's position was cleverly similar to the one we had used against Qin Xian. Rong Zhu had someone bribe the abbot of the Taoist temple where the Duke's wife often went to burn incense. The abbot had given her a birth date, telling her that if she adopted a girl born under this horoscope, her own missing daughter would be found. That birth date was mine, consumed by her longing for her daughter. The Duke's wife quickly sought me out. By then, I was 14 years old. My once small, thin frame had grown tall and graceful, and my features had fully blossomed into breathtaking beauty. Over the past 2 years, Rong Zhu had specially hired retired palace maids to refine my manners and etiquette, and had also engaged tutors to teach me music, chess, calligraphy, and painting. Unlike how he had treated Fuyin, he seemed determined to groom me into a talented and beautiful noble lady. Now, my every gesture and smile exuded the poise and elegance of a well-bred young lady. As an adopted daughter, I would not bring any shame to the Duke's prestigious household. I had also managed to obtain a lock of Yin Mingzhu's baby hair and made it into a scent that I wore on my person. The Duke's wife, who had initially been skeptical, broke down in tears the moment she saw me and caught the faint, familiar fragrance of her daughter on me. She clung to my hands, refusing to let go. But man proposes, God disposes. Just as the Duke's wife was about to formally announce her decision to adopt me, Yin Mingzhu was found and returned home. Rong Zhu's plan was thrown into disarray. The betrothal between Yin Mingzhu and Zhu Tingyuan still stood. He feared that with this marriage alliance, the crown prince would have Grand Tutor Zhu's civil support and the Duke of Zhen's military backing, making him unassailable. He had no choice but to settle for a second-best option, ordering me to destroy the betrothal between the two families, better yet, to turn them into bitter enemies. Rong Zhu wanted the Duke of Zhen's military power, and so did I. Instead of targeting Zhu Tingyuan, I chose to focus on Yin Mingzhu. Manipulating a woman through love was another lesson Rong Zhu had taught me. But in this world, love was not the only thing that could control a woman's heart. 14. Having recovered her long-lost daughter, the Duchess of Zhen refused to let Yin Mingzhu suffer any slight, and never mentioned the matter of adopting a daughter again. But she still believed that her daughter had been found because she had decided to take me in. Thus, she tried to compensate me in other ways, funding me to open a perfume shop. The shop thrived. My keen nose could easily distinguish every ingredient in a blended fragrance, allowing me to create unique scents tailored to the preferences of every noble lady who visited. Coupled with my striking looks, I naturally attracted hordes of admirers, aristocratic young men who were willing to spend a fortune for my attention. On the day the perfume shop opened, I received an unexpected gift, a brocade box containing a token emblazoned with the insignia of the Crown Prince's palace. The messenger delivered it with the utmost respect. Master says that if you encounter any trouble in this shop, you need only show this token, and all will be resolved. From then on, every 3 days, a carriage would stop discreetly outside the shop. A young guard would hurry in, purchase a large quantity of rare spices without specifying any particular type, then depart just as quickly, looking down from the perfume-making room on the second floor, I would sometimes catch a glimpse of a pale, slender hand lifting the carriage curtain to speak to the guard. The faint red marks of a bite on the back of that hand stood out clearly in the sunlight. Ever since his disaster relief mission in Jiangnan 4 years ago, the Crown Prince had suddenly become complacent and indifferent to state affairs, spending his days immersed in poetry and painting. As a result, his popularity among the common people had plummeted. In contrast, the Qin family's immense fortune had allowed Rongju to bribe his way through the court, winning over allies left and right, as the Crown Prince's influence waned. Rongju's power in the imperial court had grown to formidable proportions. Yin Mingzhu had endured great hardships during her years as a wanderer. The noble ladies of the capital looked down on her for her lack of refinement, shunning and mocking her at every turn. She, in turn, disliked their hypocrisy and preferred not to associate with them. I needed only to show her a little kindness, to cater to her tastes, and she immediately regarded me as a rare confidant. Eager to spend every day by my side in the perfume shop, watching me blend scents, whenever I had free time, she would drag me out to roam the capital, exploring every corner of the city like a wild child. The Duchess doted on her, allowing her free rein with money and showering her with the finest things. Even the braided bracelets she wore were handcrafted by the Duchess herself, each one unique and exquisite. As Yin Mingzhu moved, the bracelets would sway gently with the hem of her dress, lending her an indescribable charm and grace. I secretly obtained a lock of Zhu Tingyuan's hair and made it into a foul-smelling incense, then deliberately asked Yin Mingzhu to test it for me. Unaware of my trick, she complained loudly about the nauseating odor. Having been separated from Zhu Tingyuan for so many years, she had never felt any affection for him. After smelling that repulsive scent, she grew even more distant, refusing his invitations repeatedly and whispering to me that he smelled terrible. Judging the time was ripe, I invited Yin Mingzhu to the Wangyu Tower, a famous restaurant by the Wangyu River, to taste their newly launched dishes. Before the food could be fully served, the sound of drunken laughter drifted over from the private room next door. General Zhu, you are certainly handsome and accomplished for your age. In terms of family background, few young nobles in the capital can compare to you. And yet your fiancée wants nothing to do with you, spending all her time with that orphan girl surnamed Lu. Could it be that they share a forbidden affection? Are you not the least bit jealous? Zhu Tingyuan's voice, thick with wine, responded. Jealous? Why bother? At worst, I'll take them both as my concubines, letting them continue to be good sisters in my backyard. Women are all the same, they just haven't tasted a real man yet. Once they do, they'll be as docile as lambs. A burst of raucous laughter followed. That orphan girl is breathtakingly beautiful, if not for the protection of the Duke of Zhen's mansion. I'm afraid countless men would be crowding her perfume shop day and night. General Zhu, don't tell us you've already taken a fancy to her. Yin Mingzhu stood up abruptly and stormed next door, kicking the door open with a single blow. Inside, she saw Zhu Tingyuan with a gorgeous woman in a red dress nestled in his arms, feeding him wine from a cup with her slender, painted fingers. She let out a bitter laugh. Zhu Tingyuan, you truly are shameless. The betrothal between the two families was thus irrevocably broken. 15. Zhu Tingyuan was a fool. Originally, the dissolution of the betrothal need not have turned the Zhu clan and the Duke of Zhen's mansion into enemies, but egged on by his cronies, he actually disguised himself as a bandit and attempted to kidnap Yin Mingzhu and me when we went on an outing to the outskirts of the city. He led 4 of his personal guards, cornering me in a dilapidated, abandoned cottage. A malicious grin spread across his face. Lu Xinyu, no wonder you schemed against me. Who would have thought you were the daughter of Lu Qinghe? I rested my hand on the hilt of the sword concealed at my waist. Where is Mingzhu? Zhu Tingyuan sneered. Asleep in the next room. She refused to drink my toast, so she'll have to swallow my punishment. Once we've had our fun and killed you, this bitch, I'll pretend to rescue her. By then, she'll be begging me to marry her. If news of the kidnapping were to spread, Yin Mingzhu's reputation would be utterly ruined. Her only options would be to marry a distant husband and leave the capital, or to throw herself on Zhu Tingyuan's mercy and become his wife. I glanced coldly at the 4 guards surrounding me, seeing my apparent fear. Zhu Tingyuan's eyes filled with triumph. What, scared now? If you strip naked and kneel down to beg for my mercy, I might just. His words were cut off as he clutched his throat. A thin red line of blood blooming across his neck, he stared at me in horror, collapsing to the ground along with his 4 guards, all falling in the exact same posture. I wiped the blood from the soft sword in my hand slowly and deliberately, looking down at Zhu Tingyuan's twitching body with a sigh. Fuyin, when you egged him on to come here and court death, did you not tell him how quickly I kill? A faint, distinctive scent of jasmine perfume drifted in from outside. The tattered door of the cottage creaked open, and Fuyin stepped inside, dressed in a blood-red robe, holding a sword in one hand. I had known there would be a twist the moment I saw her nestled in Zhu Tingyuan's arms at the Wangyu Tower. I continued to wipe my sword at a leisurely pace, lifting my eyes to meet hers. You intend to kill me. Fuyin was indeed a formidable blade. Over the past 2 years, every single secret guard who had accompanied Rongju on the night he slaughtered my family had vanished without a trace, or died in accidents during their missions. Like Dark Seven, they had all met their end at Fuyin's hands. I had known all along that she would hunt them down and kill them one by one. If Dark Seven had been able to guess the truth about her origins, then surely the other guards who had been there that night could have done the same. She could not bear the thought of anyone knowing the sordid truth between her and Rongju. Their very existence was a reminder of her tragic, ridiculous fate, and that included me, who shared a similar past. What was more, even though both of us were pitiful pawns manipulated by Rongju, he had treated us with a glaring double standard. He had ordered her to climb into the beds of countless men, using her body to fuel his ambitions, while he had groomed me into a pure, virtuous noble lady. Untouched by the world's filth, when I was learning etiquette from the palace maids, or studying music, chess, calligraphy and painting with my tutors, I would often feel her gaze upon me, a gaze filled with jealousy and contempt. It was as if she wanted to tell me, or perhaps to convince herself, what does it matter that Rongju treats you differently? We are both the same, nothing more than tools for him to achieve his ambitions. There was an arrogance in her eyes, a condescending belief that she alone knew the truth. She had wanted to kill me for a long time. Zhu Tingyuan kidnapped Yin Mingzhu, attempting to destroy her reputation, and you killed him. The Duke of Zhen's mansion and the Zhu clan are now destined to be mortal enemies. The Duke dotes on his daughter so deeply that he will never again align himself with the Crown Prince. The Crown Prince's second pillar has been broken. Your mission is complete. His Highness no longer has any use for you. I will finish the rest for him. Fuyin and I had both been personally trained by Rongju. We were, in a sense, fellow disciples. I was not entirely confident that I could defeat her in a fight. I let out a soft laugh, tossing the blood-stained handkerchief in my hand onto the ground. Fuyin, how can you be sure that your so-called cleverness is not part of His Highness's plan all along? Suddenly, the sound of countless hooves thundered closer. A large contingent of soldiers surrounded the cottage. Leading them was a man mounted on a black steed. It was Rongju. Fuyin turned around in disbelief, watching as Rongju dismounted and strode quickly toward the dilapidated room where Yin Mingzhu was being held. He lifted the unconscious Yin Mingzhu into his arms, then carried her carefully to his carriage with the tender, protective air of a hero. From beginning to end, he did not spare us so much as a single glance. Within an hour, news would spread throughout the capital. The daughter of the Duke of Zhen had been kidnapped by bandits, only to be heroically rescued by the second prince. If Rongju wanted to seize the Duke of Zhen's military power, marrying Yin Mingzhu was by far the fastest way. I looked at Fuyin coldly. It seems His Highness will soon be taking a primary consort. Agony twisted Fuyin's beautiful face. For years, Rongju had kept no women in his backyard. He had never explicitly promised her anything, but he had showered her with ambiguous hints, leading her to delude herself into believing that he loved her, that she was special to him. She did not know that the same ambiguous gestures he had given her, he had also given to me. The same suggestive words he had whispered to her, he had also whispered to me. Blinded by love, she had never truly understood Rongju. The moment she had appeared here, I had known this would be the outcome. From the moment Fuyin had taken it upon herself to approach Zhu Tingyuan, every move she had made had been under Rong Zhu's watchful eyes, and he had simply gone with the flow, turning her schemes to his own advantage. He was truly cruel, knowing how deeply she loved him. He had deliberately used her to win Yin Mingzhu's hand in marriage. It was so perfectly in keeping with his twisted sense of humor. I even suspected that Rong Zhu had long been aware of the fact that Fuyin had killed those secret guards, and that he had certainly guessed she knew the truth about her family's massacre. Watching her abandon her family's blood feud, abandon her self-respect, crawling at his feet even as he used her to the point of ruin, all for the sake of a delusional love, he must have been immensely pleased. In the end, she had become exactly what he wanted her to be, a woman easily controlled by love. It was the same fate he had originally planned for me. 16. Zhu Tingyuan had died at my hand, and Grand Tutor Zhu was naturally unwilling to let me off the hook. He demanded that I pay with my life, but Zhu Tingyuan had been the one to kidnap us first, and with the Duke of Zhen arguing fiercely in my defense, neither side was willing to back down. In the end, I was thrown into the imperial prison. On the third night of my imprisonment, Rong Zhu came to see me. He wore a black cloak, standing in the dimly lit cell and staring at me for a long while before finally speaking. I did not come to save you. Do you blame me? I lowered my eyes respectfully. Your Highness must have his reasons. He let out a low chuckle. You will be out soon enough. Guess who is coming to your rescue? I looked at him, feigning confusion. Rong Zhu's smile widened. It is the Crown Prince. I froze in apparent shock. Rong Zhu raised his hand, caressing my cheek in a gesture that was both ambiguous and intimate. The Crown Prince says you are the woman he admires. He has asked the Emperor to confer upon you the title of his secondary consort. Over the years, as I had grown older, he had always treated me this way, his manner and gestures becoming increasingly suggestive, laced with temptation, just as he had done with Fuyin. He was so arrogant, convinced that he could control me with love, just as he had controlled her. His thumb came to rest on my lips, stroking them gently until they swelled slightly and turned a bright shade of red. Go to him. Go to the Crown Prince's side. Sow discord between him and Grand Tutor Zhu. Cut off his last pillar of support, then kill him. You were always meant to be my gift to him. 17. The night I entered the Crown Prince's palace, Grand Tutor Zhu stormed in with a sword, intent on killing me, only to be stopped by the Crown Prince himself. I sat in my chambers blending a new fragrance. Through the open window, I heard Grand Tutor Zhu's voice ringing out sharply, filled with rage. Tingyuan was your cousin. That woman killed your cousin. Does she not deserve to die for her crimes? Rongyin's cool, calm voice drifted back. He was the one who resorted to kidnapping first. Grand Tutor Zhu's breath hitched with anger. He was misled. She did it on purpose. She is Lu Qinghe's daughter. She is here to take revenge on the Zhu clan. Rongyin only asked one question. Why does she want revenge on the Zhu clan? Grand Tutor Zhu fell silent. He could not answer. He dared not answer. He dared not mention my father's memorial. Dared not speak of the atrocities the Zhu clan had committed in Jiangnan. In the end, Grand Tutor Zhu could only say, Your Highness, she deliberately sabotaged the marriage between the Zhu clan and the Duke of Zhen's mansion. Tingyuan kidnapped her and Yin Mingzhu, and the second prince arrived just in time to rescue them. Does that not strike you as suspicious? That woman is a curse. Keeping her by your side will only bring you ruin. I have said all that I came to say. Silence descended outside, broken only by the chirping of crickets in the summer night. When Rongyin pushed the door open and entered, the new fragrance I had blended was just beginning to curl up from the gilded incense burner. I closed the lid gently, turning to him with a calm smile. Your Highness, how do you like this scent? The curling tendrils of smoke softened the sharp lines of his handsome face. He fell silent for a moment before speaking. My grandfather has taken this matter to the Emperor, insisting on your execution. Taking you into the palace was a stopgap measure to protect you. If you wish to leave, I will find a way to arrange it for you in due time. If we were to count properly, this was only the third time we had truly met face to face. The first time, I had been a ragged beggar girl in a Jiangnan city. The second time, I had been an assassin fleeing for her life in the Wangyu River. Now, I was his secondary consort. We barely knew each other. His claim of admiring me in front of the emperor had obviously been a lie. His phoenix eyes bore a faint resemblance to Rongju's, but when he looked at me, there was far more guilt in them than pity. In truth, I had known that ever since that night in the Wangyu River, the Crown Prince's men had been searching for me, searching for the sole survivor of the Lu clan massacre. Rongju's frame-up had been a resounding success, even though Grand Tutor Ju had denied it. Rongyin could not help but suspect that he had been the mastermind behind my family's tragedy. He was not as perfect as the rumors made him out to be, but neither was he the scheming villain Rongju had painted him to be. He had tried to make amends, which was why he had sent me that token of the Crown Prince's palace. After speaking, Rongyin turned to leave. I rose to my feet, wrapping my arms around him from behind, pressing my soft body tightly against his back. The summer clothes were thin. Our body heat mingled through the light silk of my dress and the soft satin of his robe. His body tensed involuntarily, his breathing growing slightly heavier as he tried to pull my hands away from him. The faint red marks of my bite on the back of his pale hand caught my eye. "You need not do this," I cut him off, clinging to him even more tightly. "Your Highness, please do not go." 18. After that day, Rongyin and I entered a period of what seemed like conjugal bliss. He treated me with great kindness, always staying in my chambers at night, showering me with gifts, granting almost every wish I voiced, especially when it came to rare spices. No matter how hard they were to find, he would go to great lengths to procure them for me. When he had free time, he would take me out to enjoy the spring scenery by the lake. More often than not, we would spend our days cooped up in his study together. He was a man of profound erudition, with a love for all things elegant. His skill in painting was unparalleled. Having been born into a scholarly family, I had been influenced by literature and art from a young age. Coupled with the deliberate training I had received from Rongju, I was well versed in music, chess, calligraphy, and painting, hobbies that aligned perfectly with his own. Sometimes he would paint while I blended fragrances. With just a single glance, we would pass each other the tools we needed. We both tacitly avoided mentioning those sensitive, painful memories of the past, confining ourselves to talk of poetry and art. Painting over the cracks in our fragile peace, we found a strange, illusory sense of tranquility. Rumors spread throughout the palace and the capital that the Lu secondary consort was favored far too much by the Crown Prince, so much so that even the future primary consort would have to yield to her when she entered the palace. After that bitter falling out, Grand Tutor Ju never set foot in the Crown Prince's palace again. Everyone in the court and the government could see the rift between the Crown Prince and his grandfather. Many officials who had originally supported the Crown Prince began to waver in their allegiance. In contrast, the second prince was riding high on a wave of good fortune. The Duke of Zhen's only daughter was a far cry from an orphan girl like me. What was more, I was only a secondary consort. While Yin Mingzhu was to be his primary wife, their wedding could not be a shabby affair by any means. Preparations for their wedding dragged on for half a year. On the day of the grand wedding, I accompanied Rongyin to attend the ceremony. A maid accidentally spilled soup on my skirt when I went to change my clothes. Rongju was already waiting for me. He was positively radiant with triumph, looking more confident and imposing than ever. His phoenix eyes swept over me, filled with amusement. "It seems you have been living quite comfortably in the Crown Prince's palace. You have even put on a little weight." He handed me several documents, evidence of the Ju clan's crimes. Among them was the very memorial my father had written all those years ago, impeaching the Ju clan. The Duke of Zhen had become bitter enemies with Grand Tutor Ju because of Ju Tingyuan's death, now that Rongju was his son-in-law. Half of the military officers in the court had naturally thrown their support behind him. Meanwhile, Grand Tutor Ju and the Crown Prince's faction were on the verge of falling apart. The balance of power in the court had shifted. Grand Tutor Ju could no longer manipulate the court as he pleased, could no longer suppress a censor's memorial or cover up the massacre of a government official's entire family as he had done before. Rongju said, his voice cold and certain, "The time has come. He ordered me to find an opportunity to hide these pieces of evidence in Rongin's study. He had waited so long, scheming and plotting, cutting off the Crown Prince's pillars of support one by one, all for this very day. 19. I did not do as he ordered. Instead, I laid the evidence of the Jew clan's crimes directly on Rongin's desk, spreading each document out before him one by one. The evils committed by the Jew clan were far from limited to their atrocities in Jiangnan. Forming cliques to seize power, eliminating political rivals, framing loyal ministers, amassing wealth through extortion, privately mining iron ore, raising private armies, their crimes were too numerous to record. Over the years, the Jew clan had driven countless families to ruin and despair. After reading through the documents, Rongin's entire demeanor crumbled. Though he was barely past his 20th birthday, an air of profound weariness and melancholy settled over him like a shroud. His voice was hoarse and indistinct. Why did you bring these to me? A candlewick in the lamp on the desk crackled and popped, dimming the light for a moment. I picked up the candle snuffer, trimming the burnt wick away. The room brightened again. I want to give your highness a chance. Take these evidences to the palace tonight. Expose Grand Tutor Jew, and you will still be the noble and upright crown prince you once were. But that night, Rongin sat motionless before those documents, never once leaving his study. Not until the evening of the next day did the emperor come in person. Inside the crown prince's palace, all was calm and quiet. But outside, a storm of unprecedented proportions had erupted. A young scholar from Jiangnan named Song Yanqing had struck the imperial drum. Filing a direct complaint to the emperor, he endured 30 strokes of the court cane, then accused the Jew clan of ordering Jiang Shucheng, the former administrative commissioner of Jiangnan, to oppress the people and bring disaster to the region. Worse still, he charged that during the worst of the floods, the Jew clan had ordered all prefectures and cities to seal their gates, refusing refuge to the starving refugees. With blood and dirt caked on his hands, he presented evidence that the Jew clan had secretly recruited large numbers of young, strong refugees during the floods, raising a private army with the intent to rebel against the throne. The accusations pointed directly at Grand Tutor Jew and the Crown Prince. The Jew clan could be greedy for wealth, Grand Tutor Jew could be power-hungry, but raising a private army was an act that struck at the very heart of the emperor's authority. The emperor flew into a rage. He ordered Grand Tutor Jew and all members of the Jew clan to be arrested and imprisoned, commanding a full and thorough investigation. Then he went to the Crown Prince's palace in person. When the emperor pushed open the door to the study, Rongin was still sitting in the same spot, motionless. The emperor stepped inside. Flipping through the documents on the desk at random, he picked up the memorial my father had written, read a few lines, then set it down again. Rongin was the emperor's favorite son. Ever since he had been named crown prince, the emperor had promoted his maternal relatives to high positions one after another, paving the way for his succession. The emperor had raised him with his own hands, and he knew Rongin's flaws all too well. He was too kind-hearted, lacking in the resolve required of a ruler. As emperor, he could not have been completely unaware of the Jew clan's misdeeds, but he had originally hoped that one day, Rongin would do as he wished, cutting off the Jew clan's malignant influence with his own hands, becoming a worthy sovereign. Only now did the emperor realize that the crown prince was not fit to shoulder the heavy burden of the throne. Rongin could not bring himself to betray his grandfather and expose him to save his own skin, nor could he bring himself to take the ruthless path using the evidence to warn Grand Tutor Jew, allowing him to prepare for the coming storm. He had wavered between these two choices, trapped in a painful dilemma, and in the end, he had done nothing at all. This was not the heart of a true emperor. The emperor said nothing, only let out a long, heavy sigh, and turned to leave. Rongin knew then that the emperor had given up on him. 20. It had been midsummer when I entered the crown prince's palace. Now, winter had arrived in full force. I stood on the veranda of the study, where icicles hung from the eaves, staring at Rongin. His face was expressionless, his eyes red-rimmed. After a long while, he waved his hand, signaling his guards to bring someone forward. The man was dressed in the uniform of a palace eunuch, his figure gaunt and thin. He was pushed roughly to the ground before me. and when he looked up, I saw a face I knew all too well. It was Aju. I knew you were my second brother's pawn, Rongin said, his voice cold. I have been investigating you all this time, and I tracked him down. Rongin fixed his gaze on Aju. Tell her yourself, who ordered you to betray them back then? Aju threw himself to his knees with a thud, kowtowing frantically to me. Are you, forgive me, it was the second prince who forced me. I had no choice. I stared at Aju, unblinking. I had been searching for him all these years. The memory of Arya's tiny, mangled body was still fresh in my mind. How could I ever be at peace without killing him to avenge her? But I had sent people to search every military camp in the land, and had never been able to find any trace of him. I never would have guessed that he had become a eunuch, that boy from the ruined temple in Jiangnan, ragged and starving yet full of swagger, shouting our kings and nobles born into their positions, and dreaming of becoming a great general. Now he was a hunched, emaciated wretch, his eyes filled only with terror and cowardice. Rongju had promised him high rank and great wealth, vowing to help him fulfill his dream of becoming a general. But after Aju betrayed us, Rongju had sent him to the palace to be castrated, turning him into a eunuch. It was so perfectly in keeping with Rongju's twisted sense of humor. Rongin looked exhausted. After I found him, I reopened the investigation into the massacre of your family. I have not found conclusive proof, but I am certain that my grandfather was not responsible for your family's tragedy. It was my second brother. He used you. You were deceived by him. He is your true enemy. Aju crawled forward on his knees, clinging to the hem of my skirt, begging for mercy. Don't kill me. Please don't kill me. I didn't want to do it. I really didn't. It's all the second prince's fault. He lied to me. He lied to you too. There was not a flicker of emotion in my eyes as I looked down at him. I will not kill you, but someone else will. Seeing my calm expression upon learning the truth, Rongin froze, then suddenly understood. He stared at me in disbelief. You knew. You knew all along. Then why did you do all this to me? I turned to look at him. Does your highness still remember the night you returned from Jiangnan, when you received a secret letter? That day, I had just arrived in the capital. I stood in the crowd by the street, watching Rongin's 4-horse carriage pass by. I had seen that pure, flawless hand lift the carriage curtain, then lower it again. Rongju had asked me if I had ever wanted to seek help from the crown prince when I was in Jiangnan, if I had ever doubted that the crown prince was the hypocritical, scheming villain he had painted him to be. He had said, "Xinyu, shall we test him?" That night, Rongju had ordered someone to copy my father's memorial impeaching the Zhu clan, along with the case files of my family's massacre, and secretly deliver them to Rongin's study. Rongin had two choices. Either uphold justice and betray his grandfather, exposing Grand Tutor Zhu, or take the ruthless route, find the person who had sent the letter, and silence them forever. No matter which choice he made, it would have proven that he was a man worth allying with, and I would have chosen to cooperate with him against Rongju. But he had done nothing. Just like now, he had sat trapped in his study, caught in a painful dilemma, all night long. He had neither exposed Grand Tutor Zhu nor alerted him to the danger. He had simply burned the letter. Sometimes, the person who knows you best is not your ally but your enemy. Rongju knew Rongin's weakness all too well. He had guessed that Rongin would do nothing at all. His real enemy had never been Rongin himself. It had been the Crown Prince's faction led by Grand Tutor Zhu, which had propelled Rongin forward. It had been the fatherly love the Emperor held for Rongin, that night. With that single anonymous letter, he had planted the seeds of guilt in Rongin's heart, guilt towards the Lu family, guilt towards me. That was why, when I was in the imperial prison, Rongju had said that I was a gift he had prepared specially for Rongin. I looked at Rongin, my eyes deep and unfathomable. The night we met by the Wangyu River, Your Highness could have easily followed the clues to uncover the sordid secrets hidden in the Qin family's villa, but once again, Your Highness did nothing. Even now, I gave you a chance and still, you did nothing. Your Highness is not innocent. For someone in your position, sometimes doing nothing is the greatest sin of all. If good and evil go unpunished, then heaven and earth are unjust. Rongin may have been in pain, may have been caught in a dilemma, That was why, after receiving that secret letter all those years ago, he had begun to neglect his official duties, immersing himself in poetry and painting instead. He had deliberately allowed the Crown Prince's faction to weaken day by day in the court, hoping that they would no longer act with such reckless abandon, but he was far too kind, far too weak. His weakness meant that he could never suppress the ambitions of those around him, not his maternal relatives, not his brothers, not his ministers. He could not control any of them. His kindness meant that he was easily swayed by loyalty and affection. Trapped in this foolish way of bearing the sins of the Crown Prince's faction on his own shoulders, in the end, he was not the perfect, flawless Crown Prince the world had made him out to be. He was merely a mortal man, one who could not bear to let go of his family ties, yet feared aiding and abetting Avilders. To Rong Ju, such a Crown Prince was nothing but a man full of flaws and weaknesses, not worth allying with at all. Rongin doubled over in agony, his entire body trembling. "Your Highness may not have stained your hands with blood," I said, my voice cold and clear, "but the Ju clan acted under the protection of your authority. You knew what they were doing, and yet you did nothing. That in itself is an act of complicity. Your Highness is supported by the people of the entire nation, yet you have never avenged the innocent on their behalf. All of this is your sin." I took a step forward, then another, approaching him slowly. I took his hand, the hand marked with the faint scars of my bite, and placed it gently on my slightly swollen abdomen. "Your Highness, I am with child. Will you help me do one last thing? At least, do you believe me when I say this? After all his scheming and plotting, after all his elaborate plans, my second brother will never sit on that throne." 21. With Rong Ju fanning the flames deliberately, the heinous crimes of Grand Tutor Ju and the entire Ju clan sent shockwaves across the nation. The Ju clan had fallen so far, and the Crown Prince could not escape blame. Rongin, once lauded for his benevolence, saw his reputation plummet overnight. Calls to depose him as Crown Prince reverberated throughout the imperial court, yet before the edict to dethrone him could be issued, tragic news emerged from the Crown Prince's palace. The Crown Prince had committed suicide by poisoning. When the Emperor rushed to the palace once more, Rongin was clinging to his last breath. He grabbed my hand weakly and said to the Emperor, "Father, are you carrying my child? I beg you to protect them both." The Emperor broke down in tears beside the bed. This was the son he had raised with his own hands, watching him grow from a babbling infant to a toddler taking his first steps, from learning to hold a brush and read to observing state affairs in the court. Until he had become the noble and virtuous man admired by all. In the face of life and death, all sins, all grievances and resentments, vanished without a trace. Rongin was buried with the full honors befitting a Crown Prince. The Emperor bestowed upon him the posthumous title of Crown Prince Xiaoi. The Emperor could not have failed to guess the role I, a daughter of the Lu clan, had played in the downfall of the Ju clan and the Crown Prince. But Rongin's final words and the child in my womb saved me. Consumed by overwhelming grief, the Emperor unleashed all his anger on Grand Tutor Ju and the Ju clan, ordering the execution of 3 generations of their family. Many members of the Crown Prince's faction were implicated in the fallout. Even the prefect of Jingju, who had covered up the massacre of my family all those years ago, was thrown into prison. On the final day of mourning for Rongin, Rong Ju came to the palace under the cover of night. The morning hall was deathly quiet. He dismissed all the servants, leaving only me and him alone. After placing 3 sticks of incense before Rongin's spirit tablet, he told me a story. Once upon a time, there was a prince, the Emperor's second son. He and his third brother were born on the same day. Both of their mothers died from complications during childbirth. The third brother's mother was the Empress, the woman the Emperor loved most in the world, so the third brother was named Crown Prince at the age of 7 days, and raised personally by the Emperor at his side. But the second son was branded as the one who had killed his mother. He endured neglect and coldness from the moment he was born. As a young boy, he could not understand why, though both of them had lost their mothers at birth, the Crown Prince was showered with love and affection, while he was ignored by his father. Was there something wrong with him that he could not compare to the Crown Prince? So when he saw the crown prince studying literature and martial arts diligently, earning praise from the emperor, he too studied day and night, excelling above all other princes in the imperial examinations. Yet the emperor publicly criticized him for being overly competitive and lacking humility. When he saw the crown prince rewarding palace servants with cold tea on a scorching summer day, earning praise for his kindness, he did the same. But the emperor accused him of currying favor with others. When he saw the crown prince caring for the emperor's health, touching the emperor with his filial piety, he followed suit. But the emperor harshly reprimanded him for coveting imperial power and harboring traitorous intentions, punishing him by making him kneel for 3 whole days. The same actions, when done by the crown prince, earned accolades. When done by him, they were always wrong. He finally understood his father's heart was biased. While the emperor was reprimanding him, he was also using him as a warning to the other princes, cautioning them never to overstep the crown prince, never to harbor ambitions for the throne. A few years later, the emperor sent all the other princes away to their fiefdoms early. Unexpectedly, he was left behind. The emperor even allowed him to enter the court and develop his own power base. Because the emperor had noticed the crown prince's kindness and weakness, and wanted him to be a whetstone to sharpen the crown prince, he was nothing more than a test prepared by the Son of Heaven to temper his heir. Rongju looked at Rongyi's coffin and spirit tablet, spreading his arms wide and laughing aloud. Now I, this whetstone, have shattered the sword he cherished so carefully. I wonder if father is satisfied. He stopped laughing, his gaze turning cold as he looked at me. He leaned down and pinched my chin roughly. Xinyu, you have been very disobedient. How dare you carry his child? I tilted my head up to meet his gaze, not flinching from the malice in his eyes. Your Highness, I have fallen in love with him. Rongju froze for a moment, then let out a laugh of disbelief. He tightened his grip, his fingers closing around my throat. How dare you love him? How could you love him? Have you forgotten how your family died? Have you forgotten how you helped me push him step by step toward his doom? I looked at him calmly. When a person dies, all debts are settled. I am even with him now. Rongju sneered. You think I will allow you to give birth to this child? I simply said, the Emperor's people are everywhere in this palace now. If your Highness tries to force me, I will not hesitate to tell the Emperor everything I have done for you. We can all go down together. Rongju's hand around my throat tightened abruptly, as if he wanted to strangle me right then and there, but he restrained himself. I knew he was on the verge of a violent outburst. He had always seen me as a pawn in his hands, something he could manipulate and use at will. He had tried to control me with love, never imagining that one day, I would break free from his grasp because of love. He found it absurd, unbelievable. He was furious, consumed by resentment, but in the end, he released his grip. His face returned to its usual impassive expression, and he even managed a faint smile. Xinyu, you may give birth to this child. When I ascend the throne, not even father can stop me. You will be mine in the end. 22. Rongyi's death dealt a devastating blow to the emperor. After punishing the Zhu clan, he suddenly fell gravely ill, his health deteriorating rapidly. Though Rongju was not formally named crown prince yet, the emperor was too weak to handle state affairs, and had no choice but to hand over most of the imperial government to him. With the Duke of Zhen's support, and Grand Tutor Zhu now out of the way, all the courtiers who had previously wavered in their allegiance flocked to his side. Civil and military officials throughout the court were now his loyal supporters. The other princes, far away in their fiefdoms without any military or political power, posed no threat to him at all. Whether he held the title of heir apparent or not no longer mattered. I ignored the upheaval unfolding outside the palace walls, focusing all my attention on nurturing the child in my womb. 6 months after Rongyi's coffin was placed in the mausoleum, I gave birth to a healthy baby boy. The emperor named him Rong Jingju, declaring that though he was born into the imperial family, it was not a bad thing to live a life free from the shackles of power. Wandering through the world as a carefree soul, on the day of Jingzhou's 1-month-old celebration banquet, Yin Mingzhu pulled me aside after the feast, away from the crowd. There are more and more women in His Highness's mansion now. He visits me less and less often. If one day, her voice trailed off, laced with complaint. When he has 3,000 beauties in his harem, how should I deal with it? I knew that to win over the courtiers. Rongju had taken the daughters of several high-ranking officials into his mansion one after another. He did not take Fuyin as his concubine. With the emperor gravely ill, he was acting as regent, holding more power than ever before. He no longer needed Fuyin to kill for him. I guessed that in the fantasy world she had built for herself, she believed that once Rongju achieved his great ambition, he would definitely take her as his wife. After all, for him, she had betrayed everything, giving him her body, her soul. But Rongju had even taken 2 of the other female secret guards from the battalion into his mansion, yet he only appointed Fuyin as the head palace maid. She waited on him every day, knelt outside his bed every night, listening to him share his bed with other women, sharing his love and affection with them. He still had such a twisted sense of humor. Before I gave birth, Fuyin came to see me once. She looked distracted. Her gaze wandering aimlessly to my swollen belly, she suddenly let out a cold laugh. It does not matter that he did not take me. At least he did not take you either. I lifted my left hand to sip my tea, revealing a bracelet of large, luminous night pearls on my wrist. Fuyin's face paled instantly. This was a treasure that even Yin Mingzhu, his primary consort, had begged Rongju for, yet he had refused to give it to her. But here it was, on me. I had worn it deliberately to show her. Fuyin left with a deathly pale face. A woman blinded by love was fragile beyond repair. Yin Mingzhu squeezed my hand tightly, her eyes filled with eagerness. Are you? The crown prince broke with his grandfather for you. He even killed himself before the emperor could issue the edict to depose him, to ensure that you and your child would live a life of prosperity and safety. How did you make him love you so deeply that he would die for you? Even His Highness looks at you with such. It was midsummer again. In the courtyard filled with gardenias, there was a faint, distinctive scent of jasmine perfume lingering in the shadows. Fuyin had killed Dark Seven, yet after all these years, she still used the jasmine perfume he had personally blended for her. I paused deliberately for a moment, then said to Yin Mingzhu, do you know that there is a kind of love poison in this world? If you raise it with your own blood for 49 days, planting the mother poison in your body, then make a poison incense with the hair of the one you love to lure it, the child poison will crawl into their body on its own. Once the mother and child poisons are planted, from that moment on, their eyes will see no one else but you. 23. When Jingju was 3 months old, I secretly sent him out of the capital, evading Rongju's watchful eyes. The next day, Song Yanqing, the young scholar from Jiangnan who had once struck the imperial drum to accuse Grand Tutor Ju, suddenly stood at the gate of the Imperial Academy, where crowds of people passed by, and shouted at the top of his lungs that the second prince, Rongju, was the true culprit behind the Jiangnan floods all those years ago. He claimed that in his bid for the crown prince's throne, Rongju had ordered his men to blow up several river dikes in Jiangnan during the heavy spring and summer rains, causing catastrophic floods that left countless people homeless and starving. The Ju clan had merely taken the fall for his crimes. He scattered copies of the evidence publicly, declaring that he had been deceived and used by Rongju back then. Unaware of the full truth of what had happened, the Ju clan had indeed been guilty of oppressing the people of Jiangnan. But Rongju, who had sacrificed the lives of thousands of innocent civilians for his own ambition to seize the throne, was far more unforgivable. When the gravely ill emperor heard the news in the palace, he was so enraged that he coughed up a mouthful of blood on the spot. Rongyin's death had been an unhealable wound in his heart. He knew that Rongyin had not died solely to protect me and Jingju, he had died to atone for the guilt that had weighed heavily on his soul. The emperor could not help but wonder if Rongyin had known that the Jiangnan floods were not his fault. Would the burden of sin on his heart have been lighter? Would he still have chosen to take his own life? But by now, Rongju held immense power. Even though Song Yanqing's accusation had caught him off guard, he still managed to strike first before the emperor could act. The capital garrison under the Duke of Zhen's command quickly seized control of the city. The imperial guards, whose loyalty Rongju had long bought with gold and silver, also took control of the palace. He had Song Yanqing thrown into prison and tortured. forcing him to confess that he had been acting on someone else's orders to frame him. Overnight, the imperial capital was thrown into chaos. The political landscape shifting dramatically, fear gripped the hearts of everyone in the city, with rumors spreading like wildfire. The emperor was placed under house arrest in his palace chambers by Rong-ju. He cursed him as a traitorous son, declaring that he would never let him have his way. Rong-ju stood with his hands behind his back, looking at him with a smile. "Father, I have already sent men to execute all your other sons. Though I was never your favorite son, I am now your only remaining son. You have no choice." He paused, as if suddenly remembering something. "Ah, I almost forgot about one more. I will send men to the crown prince's palace right away to kill that little bastard." The emperor stared at him in shock and fury, his breath catching in his throat. He collapsed and died on the spot, looking at his father's lifeless body, eyes wide open in eternal unwillingness. Rong-ju's heart was filled with the sweet taste of revenge. He threw his head back and laughed loudly as he strode out of the emperor's chambers, heading straight for the Golden Palace. He knew that he should now summon his men to the imperial study to draft the Edict of Succession, order his father's body to be prepared for burial, and announce the late emperor's passing to the nation. But he wanted to sit on the throne he had coveted for so many years first. He walked into the Golden Palace, stepping up the imperial staircase step by step toward the dragon throne that he had looked up to for so long, then sat down upon it. Years of scheming and plotting had finally paid off. What incomparable joy it was. Even the incense newly lit in the palace hall seemed to smell sweeter than usual. As the incense in the burner burned down to ash, he noticed Fuyin standing quietly at his side, looking at him with a strange expression. Her eyes were filled with greed, with eeriness, with a hint of madness. She stared at him, her voice trembling with hesitation. "Your Highness, do you love me?" Rong-ju's expression turned cold. He was about to order her to get out when he suddenly felt something wrong with his body. He clutched his chest, supporting himself weakly on the golden dragon armrests, staring at Fuyin in shock and anger. "What have you done to me?" Fuyin looked at his face with an obsessed gaze, stepping closer to him. "Is your Highness's heart aching for me?" "It does not matter. Everything I did for your Highness, I did willingly. I knew it all along. Your Highness must love me. From now on, you will only love me." Rong-ju's brows furrowed tightly. He shouted at the top of his lungs, "She's gone mad. Kill her." The hidden guards lurking in the shadows leaped out instantly, blocking Fuyin's path as she tried to approach Rong-ju. Fuyin looked around in confusion at the hidden guards surrounding her, then turned to look at Rong-ju, whose face was twisted with disgust. "Your Highness, I have done so much for you. Why do you still not love me? You should love me." Rong-ju gave the order without a shred of mercy. "Kill her." 24. When I stepped into the Golden Palace, the floor was covered in a scene of brutal carnage. All of Rong-ju's hidden guards lay dead at Fuyin's hands. She was a blade forged by Rong-ju himself, his proudest creation. Even after a fierce battle, covered in wounds and missing one arm, she still stood stubbornly on her feet, holding her sword and stumbling step by step toward Rong-ju, calling out to him affectionately, "Your Highness." I walked forward, driving my sword straight through her heart from behind. As she fell to the ground, she murmured unwillingly with her last breath, "Your Highness, why do you not love me? You should love me." Rong-ju leaned against the cold armrests of the dragon throne, not sparing Fuyin's body a single glance. He only stared at me, his expression dark and menacing. For a man as intelligent as he was, the moment he saw me, he understood everything. "Xin Yu, it was you." "Why?" I smiled, saying nothing. Instead, just as he had done to me all those years ago, I took out a piece of candy and a dagger. Placing them before him and ordering him to choose, Rong-ju froze for a moment, then lifted his phoenix eyes to look at me, his gaze cold and venomous. "When did you find out?" I continued to smile. "I have known all along. I had endured for so many years, pretending for so many years. Finally, I could stand tall above Rong-ju, manipulating him just as he had manipulated me back then. I had said it long ago, Fuyin would be the blade I used to exact my revenge. Rong-ju had been far too arrogant. He had trampled on Fuyin's feelings without a second thought. never once suspecting that she would be the one to betray him. He had never realized that a woman driven to madness by love would be the greatest flaw in his carefully laid plans. With just a little guidance, Fuyin had done exactly as I wished, poisoning him with the love poison. Now the poison had spread through every inch of his body, leaving him too weak even to stand up. He looked at me, his face contorted with a mixture of shock, anger, resentment, and confusion, emotions he rarely showed. He gritted his teeth and asked, "The Duke of Zhen's soldiers have long surrounded the Crown Prince's palace. The entire palace is under the control of the Imperial Guards. How did you get in here?" "It was me, outside the Golden Palace." Yin Mingzhu stepped in slowly, dressed in magnificent robes and adorned with countless jewels in her hair. By her side stood Song Yanqing, pushing a wheelchair, his body covered in wounds. Seated in the wheelchair was Qin Feng. The three of them stood together, staring at Rongju with cold, unforgiving expressions. Qin Feng spoke first. "Your Highness has always been so arrogant, but money can move the gods. Just as your Highness was able to bribe the Imperial Guards, so too can I. The palace is no longer under your control." Rongju narrowed his eyes slightly, looking at the three of them in confusion. One was a puppet he had used to take control of the Qin family's fortune. One was a tool he had used to seize the Duke of Zhen's military power. One was a pawn he had handpicked to bring down the Zhu clan. Until today, these three had been nothing more than insignificant specks of dust to him. He could not understand why they had betrayed him, especially Yin Mingzhu, who was his wife. If he had taken one more step, she would have become the empress of the entire nation. Yin Mingzhu pulled a tattered, dirty bracelet from her bosom. The grime on it was mixed with dried blood, and it had become loose with age, making her movements as she held it seem incredibly gentle and careful. "Your Highness, I am not actually Yin Mingzhu. My name is Minna. I was once a beggar girl in the city of Jiangnan." Eria had been the real Yin Mingzhu. She had been too young when she went missing to even remember her own name. Later, she had wandered to Jiangnan, where she was taken in by an old woman. The old woman had a daughter who had died at a young age, named Dea, so she had called the little girl Eria. After the old woman passed away, she became a beggar, meeting Aju. Then the rest of us. She had always known that she had parents who loved her dearly, but she could never find her way home. When she was tortured to death in that brothel, she had not been able to remember that she had a beautiful name, Yin Mingzhu. Her parents had cherished her like a precious pearl. If Rongju had not ordered Aju to betray us, perhaps one day she could have returned to the Duke and Duchess of Zhen's side. Rongju had caused the Duke of Zhen's only daughter to die a tragic death. From the very beginning, he had never been destined to win the Duke's loyalty, yet the Crown Prince had been too weak. If Rongyin had ascended the throne, the Duke of Zhen would have been forced to submit to Grand Tutor Zhu forever. Naturally, he had chosen to ally with me instead, many years ago. In that redemption farce that Rongju had staged for his own twisted amusement, a tiny, insignificant little girl had sealed his fate of defeat today. Yin Mingzhu clutched the bracelet tightly to her chest, smiling through her tears as she looked at Rongju. "When we killed Aju together, one knife each." He still remembered Eria. He remembered how he had wronged her. At the very least, before he died, he felt remorse. "But your Highness has surely forgotten all about us, haven't you?" For the first time, a look of blank confusion appeared on Rongju's face. After Aju had betrayed us all those years ago, Guzi had been clever enough to escape halfway to the labor camp. He had wandered to the capital as a beggar, where I had found him. Later, I had sent him back to Jiangnan to find the others. In the end, he had only been able to find Xiaonyo and Minna. When he found Minna, she had been tortured beyond recognition in that brothel. Xiaonyo had had his legs crushed by a boulder while working in the labor camp. When Guzi found him, he had been thrown into a mass grave, left to die. Later, Xiaonyo had become Qin Feng, with the help of Qinxian's account books. I had assisted him in secretly bypassing Rongju's men to take full control of the Qin family's fortune. Minna had become Yin Mingzhu. I had given her the bracelet that Eria had clutched in her hand when she died, helping her gain the trust of the Duke and Duchess of Zhen. Guzi had changed his name to Song Yanqing, pretending to be a young scholar from Jiangnan who hated the Zhu clan with a passion, catching Rongju's attention. Rongju had never imagined that the few little beggars from that ruined temple in Jiangnan, whom he had dismissed as insignificant creatures he could crush under his heel at any time, would one day stand here together, united in their revenge against him, just as he had never imagined, all those years ago when he had slaughtered my entire family yet spared my life, so arrogant and confident, declaring, "A little girl like her can never stir up any trouble. Keeping her alive will be far more entertaining than killing her." He had never dreamed that one day, the little girl he had treated as a pawn to be manipulated at will would force him to choose between a piece of candy and a dagger, just as he had done to her. "Your Highness once taught me," I said, picking up the dagger and twirling it between my fingers, "that to kill a member of the imperial family like you, you must first cut off all their wings one by one." I smiled coldly, my eyes glinting with triumph. "Now all your wings belong to me. I will not only take your life, I will also make all your schemes and plots come to nothing, turning everything you worked for into my own success. I will make you watch as the throne you could almost touch slips away forever. I will make you die with your eyes wide open in eternal regret." His plans in ruins, his power gone, Rongju leaned back against the dragon throne, covered in golden carvings, and looked at me, laughing loudly until tears streamed down his face. "Well done, Xinyu, you have indeed learned well." I raised my hand, and with a single stroke of the dagger, slit his throat. 25. The second Prince Rongju, guilty of treason, patricide and the murder of his kin, met his deserved end in the palace. On the very same day, the Duke of Zhen led all civil and military officials in proclaiming the imperial eldest grandson Rong Jingju as the new emperor. With his birth mother Lady Lu honored as the Empress Dowager, as the young emperor was still in his infancy, Empress Dowager Lu assumed the regency, holding court and governing the state. The countless heinous crimes committed by Rongju were finally made public to the entire nation, among them the horrific massacre of my family. History is written by the victors, as the people cursed Rongju's name. The stigma that had tarnished Rongyin's reputation due to his ties to the Zhu clan gradually faded and was reversed. Once again, he became the noble and virtuous crown prince praised by all. He had to remain that noble and virtuous crown prince, for only then could he lend legitimacy to Jingju and me. Dressed in a phoenix coronet and imperial robe, I held the infant new emperor in my arms as I ascended the dragon throne. The bloodstains left by Rongju on the throne had long since been scrubbed clean. I listened to the thunderous shouts of "Long live the Empress Dowager" echoing beneath my feet. Gazing down at the rows of officials before me, I did not miss the way they looked at me, contemptuous, mocking. Their gazes were exactly the same as those of Rongju, and of so many other men who had looked at me before. They were no doubt thinking that a woman and a child would eventually become pawns in their hands, to be manipulated and toyed with at will. It did not matter. I was patient. The many secrets contained within Qin Xian's account book were finally ready to fulfill their true purpose.